do you want to go through the right door? And then in the book, it said, if you want to go through the left, you have to turn to page 32. If you want to go through the right, you must turn to page 16. And then the story would obviously carry on whatever page you chose to go to at that point. So they were called Choose Your Own Adventure books, and they were pretty entertaining, I think, for teenagers, because you had the power to really decide, you know, how the hero would play in the story.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. And I think it was kind of the mechanic was restricted to books for a very long time. Recently, though, Netflix have come out with a new rom-com, which uses the same mechanic. So in the film itself, which is called Choose Love, and I think it's live on Netflix right now, you can actually, at certain points in the film, decide on what the main character does next. So because it's a rom-com, obviously it's a protagonist who meets guys, and you know, she either dumps them or she dates them. And in the film itself, you can decide what she should do. So should she carry on seeing this guy? Should she go on a second date, or skip over and see what else is coming down the line? So as a mechanic, I think it's a pretty interesting idea for Netflix. It's the first time that I've seen it. And obviously it works on a streaming platform like Netflix because you have the ability to interact with the film. So I have to admit, Alex, I haven't watched the film as yet, even though I think my wife was quite keen to watch it over the weekend. I persuaded her to rather watch the rugby. But yeah, I think it's worthwhile maybe just checking out, because, you know, what I'm interested in, what we're interested in, is indicators of change. So stories that really indicate that something has changed within a certain category. And if this concept works in filmmaking, I think it opens up a whole new genre of interactive films, where you could potentially watch the same movie a few times and get a different storyline every single time. So yeah, I think it's a nice one. I need to go and test it for myself. And see if it works. You know?
So do you think, because clearly this is where things are going, right? Where we're you know, you've got personalized Teslas, you've got personalized music tastes, Spotify, you've got the algorithms and the technological kind of forces behind us that are making things more convenient, more to your taste, more to your liking, more and more, right? So that's obviously the general direction of travel. But now, when it comes to something like movies, does that also force us to re-examine the experience of watching a film? Like, you know, because you just said, you know, you're going to sit down with your wife to watch this, but at the same time, if something is going to become uber personalized, what's the point in watching it together? Because clearly you have different tastes, and maybe that means that, you know, it'll be a completely different outcome, or different kinds of characters would be, you know, part of the storyline depending on who you are. So does it mean that the entertainment experience, in this case with movies, is becoming more of a solitary experience? What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's certainly a danger of that. And I've read many reviews that says this, you know, the trend of personalization is really creating quite a, it's creating a level of isolation for individuals, because exactly as you say, your experience of a movie or a product or a service could be just based on your own subjective experience on it, and you can't share that experience with anyone else. So there's a potential of that happening. I'm assuming that not all movies are going to use this device. I think there's still going to very much be a demand for a story rolling out as the storyteller wants you to experience it. I can't think of anything worse than going to the next Star Wars movie and having to watch it a million times just to see all the iterations of what might happen. So I don't think it applies itself to all movies. I think it's useful in that it's a technology which allows you to experience certain movies or certain content in a unique way, which is an alternative to the normal way that we always view movies. So, you know, again, I don't think it's an all or nothing thing. I don't think everyone's going to be wanting to have this kind of experience. But I wouldn't mind trying it out for myself. You know, the choose your own adventure books for me were hugely entertaining. But then also, I'm not still reading choose your own adventure books. I've moved on to sort of more standard ones. So I think it's another alternative. It's another option, and it kind of blends movie making or movie viewing and gaming in some sense. Yeah, so I think the blending of those two ideas could create a new innovation.
So if you can see my screen, we've got the moment of truth here. Kiss him or don't kiss him, right? So it's interesting, obviously, because that's going to start a kind of a rabbit warren of different options that happens from this point onwards. So you're right when you say there's a mix there of what gaming allows you to do, because these sorts of storified gaming kind of trends, or rather the mechanisms of telling a story, but also making it feel like a game, and there's choice and there's things to explore, have been around for maybe 2 decades already. But at the same time, like, I wonder how much of this adds to the actual storytelling narrative versus something that ends up just being a gimmick. Like, have you seen Choose Love? Not because of the great acting or the amazing score or the groundbreaking special effects, but because of that. So I'm reminded of a Martin Scorsese quote. Maybe you know it as well, where he said that the Marvel films aren't real films. It's not real cinema. And this coming from the Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, Last Temptation of Christ man himself. So do we need to re-examine these kinds of things just because the technology's sort of putting it into a different light? Or are we, do we need to stick to our guns and say it's not a movie, or it's a different kind of...
Look, as much as I respect Martin Scorsese, that's his personal opinion. And the reality is the Marvel films are incredibly popular and they've made an incredible amount of money. So he might not classify it as a movie, but there is a whole sort of cohort of people who love Marvel films. So, I think, again, I kind of say it's an option. I don't think it's for everybody. I think there will be people who are fans of it. And again, in the hands of a crafter, in the hands of a specialist, in the hands of someone who knows how to tell a story in a great way, the mechanic might add to the experience of that film. This little rom-com, I think, is the first iteration of what might be, but it's certainly not the be all and end all. It's an experiment. It's a prototype. So let's see where it goes. Maybe what happens at some stage is Avatar 3 might come out with the movie as James Cameron would like you to see it, and then another iteration where you can choose your own adventure within Avatar. So that might be interesting. So you cater for multiple marketplaces, people who are more old school and people who are more curious as to where things might go. As you were playing that clip, I was just thinking, I can see how this might lead to a fight in my household, because my wife will say, no, leave him and I'll be kiss him, and
I suppose it adds to the rewatchability, right? But I suppose it also takes away from, I can only imagine, shows like Succession and Game of Thrones and all these wildly popular kind of series that the whole world binges together. But if no one is following the same storyline, then what's the point in sort of discussing it the next morning with your colleague over coffee, right? So I suppose it's going to have all of these new social consequences, but maybe that's part of the experiment, as you say. Maybe that's part of the fun.
Well, maybe now you might get streamers who are movie watchers, so you can stream someone's movie experience. Again, it might open up a whole new entertainment category.
Yeah, indeed.
We don't know. It's the beginning, but it's an interesting new twist.
It is, yeah. And I've posted the link to your article about discussing it, and of course I'm sure if you've got a Netflix account, anyone listening, then you'll be able to go and check it out and judge for yourself whether it's a gimmick or if it's awesome, and if you enjoyed it, if it helped to tell the story differently. Just switching gears now, there was another story that caught our eye about Pinterest. the kind of how do you define Pinterest? I'm not really sure what it is. You know, it's something between a mood board and a interactive scrapbook. I mean, how would you define what Pinterest does? Because they've been around for a long time, but I don't have a Pinterest account myself. Maybe I'm a little bit biased here, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked that, because Pinterest themselves define their platform as search, social media, and commerce all connected with each other.
Interesting.
I know my wife uses Pinterest quite a lot. She creates boards of sort of outfits and things that she might want to wear. So she actually uses it more for search. But if you want to share your search, you want to share your boards with your network, that's where the social media side of it comes into play. But now Pinterest themselves have got a new strategy where they're really trying to cement and strengthen the commerce side of Pinterest. And what's interesting about Pinterest, as opposed to all the other social networks that you have, is that the ads on Pinterest are really embedded within the experience of the platform itself.
Yes.
Just as an example, if you're on Facebook, the Facebook ads or the sponsored posts can be quite intrusive, because actually you just want to see what your friends are up to, and now you've got these sponsored posts coming. As an alternative to Facebook, Pinterest, if you're looking for blue hats, an advertiser or a marketer can literally go and pay for their blue hat to be part of the universe of blue hats on Pinterest. Right. Potentially then that selection of that item which is an ad, becomes part of your board. What's great about Pinterest is that if you want to buy the blue hat, you can click on it, and that goes to a third party like Amazon or whatever fulfillment retailer is selling that hat. But it really is a seamless platform of commerce, unlike everybody else. So it's an interesting new strategy, and they're really spending a lot of money in building partnerships with marketers and with brands and with retailers to sell them this new opportunity. And again, we're interested in change. We're interested in things that are being done differently. And I think this approach from Pinterest is one to really look at, because they've taken embedded native advertising and they've really not necessarily found a way to blur it or make you feel like it's not advertising. They're actually quite bold about the fact that their advertising is their content. And that's really the holy grail of online platforms. They want that advertising content to be part of the experience, a positive part of the experience. And I get the sense that Pinterest are starting to tap into that. Understandably, they've got a new CEO who I think is coming with some really cool ideas, because commercially, I think the platform has kind of been up and down. Some years they make a bit of a profit, most years they make a loss. But now they're saying, well, with this new way of looking at the platform, the world is their oyster, because they're strong in North America, but there's, the rest of the world that can be, this value can be sold to advertisers and marketers and retailers in other parts of the world. So, yeah, it looks like there's a bit of a good news story there from a social media platform for once. I say for once because, just the news flow coming out of Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, is a bit of a disaster. I don't think there's much of a strategy happening there. So yeah, I think social media and social media companies are maturing, and they need to find ways that to really commercialize in a sustainable way. So it'll be very interesting to see how the others unlock that value and really start running a proper sustainable business.
So just to dig into that a bit more, because I like what you were saying about the idea of social media companies kind of getting through the sort of the teenager with a bad haircut phase and now sort of maturing into the next, sort of version of AT&T and Exxon and that kind of next generation of companies, if you like. So obviously most of them, or nearly all of them, are either dependent on membership revenue or ad revenue, right? as Mark Zuckerberg famously said when he testified in front of Congress a number of years ago, Senator, we run ads, right? So that's the business model. That's it. It's straightforward. So something like Pinterest, maybe you can sketch just quickly what has been the challenge for them. Why have they maybe not garnered as much success or attention as something like Facebook or Twitter, and what they're exactly trying to do now to get right? Because as you said in your article, they've there's a $500 billion global advertising spend online, and they only get 0.5% of that. So how are they trying to kind of jostle for position?
Right. So my understanding of a Pinterest is that it's a very niche social media platform. Unlike Twitter, where anyone with an opinion can jump onto it and just share it with their network, Pinterest is more of a curation tool. So if you are somebody who's wanting to curate ideas, be that for what are you going to buy next, in your wardrobe, or if you're doing a renovation of your kitchen or your bathroom and you're looking for ideas, Pinterest is a platform where you can go and look for ideas and curate those ideas on your own
in a very visual way, right? It's all sort of visual scrapbook kind of, yeah.
Very much so. And so also you're not necessarily producing your own content. You're looking at the content which is available, and there's an endless supply of content, and it's all sort of it's all meshed with each other. So if I select an image, once I've selected that image, then based on that selection underneath, it gives me a deeper subset of the same image, but in different iterations. So I think, again, if you're looking to curate a look, or you're looking to get ideas or inspiration, it's a great platform. I think what Pinterest did previously is that they kind of followed the same recipe that all other social media platforms did. So you've got content and then you've got ad. So there's a clear distinction between the two. And I think that kind of follows from the mindset that was brought in from the magazine industry.
Yes.
You have
feature,
article, editorial.
Yeah.
Oh, here's an ad. Nothing else on this page but ad. Now, we know that works for some social platforms, but you can actually blur the lines between advertising and content if your users allow you to do that. Now, often users don't like that, because then they feel that you're kind of fooling them, or you're tricking them into believing that certain content is editorial, when in actual fact it's not. It's an ad. So you can't lie to people. People are very smart. You shouldn't do that. The difference now is that Pinterest have embedded those ads into their content, which is a big step. But actually what they've realized is that they are not just a lead generating machine. They're actually part of the sales funnel, but at a lower level. So when you're an advertiser, what you look for generally is awareness, and you want lead generation. Okay, so you go and buy Google ads, or you spend some budget on Facebook, and that often just brings you the leads with the right target market. But conversion is kind of left to you. You need to then convert those clients based on how you present your value proposition to that target market.
Yes.
What Pinterest has done is said, actually, we can do the heavy lifting of conversion for you. So, the conversion has kind of happened because somebody has taken the inspiration, put it into their board. They've already fallen in love with your table or chair. You don't need to go and convince them now that they must buy this thing. They're in love with it. It's on their board. This is how they see their lounge playing out. So now all I need to do is I just need to connect that user with a retailer that can fulfill that conversion. And that's the secret sauce which they've now tapped into, is that they're completing that sales funnel journey. They are now in the business of facilitating conversion, which I think, no other social network is at this stage, I would assume, capable of doing such a thing. And it's because of the very nature of the people that use Pinterest and what they use it for. So it was always there. They've just kind of connected the dots now. And I think the technology is also there. AI technology can also help curate these looks. That what they can also do now is that they can fully load a page with advertising. Even on Google, you can't put too much advertising on a Google page because you're going to cloud out the content that people want to see. But on Pinterest, you can literally front load your entire page with advertising, and people don't mind because it's what they were looking for in any case.
Okay, that was really well explained. But you mentioned the 500-pound gorilla AI, so I have to give you an AI question. Come on, it's 2023. So I promise not to use the letter GPT, but at the same time, is there a longer term case for something like Pinterest, maybe specifically like Pinterest, when, you know, instead of needing to go through a scrapbook to kind of, or the scrapbook type layout that Pinterest gives you, when, you know, I could just go into an AI image generator or some kind of AI ideation tool and just prompt exactly what I'm looking for, and then, you know, help, you know, it sort of generates or gives me like, yeah, okay, wedding dresses, or, you know, a birthday cake, or you know, a party decoration for a 70th birthday, whatever it might be. You know, I can get all of those ideas, and I can kind of tailor make exactly what I'm thinking to the point where the prompt gives me exactly what I need, instead of trawling through a whole lot of maybes. Do you think that that's a threat, or do you think that there's still a case for using something like Pinterest?
Yeah, I think it's such an excellent point that you have made. And maybe without realizing it, you've opened up a bit of a can as to, you know, how do we define search? Because when I'm on Google and I'm searching for that one point, which is the answer to my specific question. When you're searching on a platform like Pinterest, I don't actually know what I'm searching for. But Pinterest facilitates the experience of searching through all sorts of options that you didn't know existed before. So I think exactly on that point, search itself exists on a continuum. There's academic search, and then there's, I don't know, I'm just going to go look. So there's like curious search. I'm going to go and browse. So I think Pinterest is more of a browsing search where you look around, and when you see something, it's like, wow, I never even knew that existed. But now that I see it based on the journey, which I think Pinterest is very good at curating for me, you're now inspired and you include that in your answer set, if I can put it that way. But it's a good question, because I think in many ways, you can't just look at search and think, oh, I know exactly what it is. It completely depends on the audience. It completely depends on the use case for what you need to search for. And I think in this instance, people are looking for something that they don't necessarily know exists. They're browsing around.
Right.
And if AI can facilitate that, or lubricate that experience, then hey, great. Then it's a useful tool in this case.
It's so interesting. Every time we have these conversations, there's always this kind of pattern that emerges. And I wonder if it comes up for you as well, whether we're talking about music or Netflix or social media or AI or any of these kind of, industries, massive areas of change and sort of social interest. You've still got these underlying kind of human behaviors that more or less don't really change, or are rather still seeking the same thing, still seeking connection, still seeking authenticity, honest conversation, whatever it might be. But always those things are sort of still at the end of the day what we want. And if anything, it sometimes feels that these new technological innovations seem to only reinforce that, especially if they are trying to maybe not reinforce that, so sometimes it runs contrary to the intention, but there's still these kind of diehard behaviors and patterns that we are still running after, that we're still doing. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, because exactly as you say, there are things which change and there are a lot of things that don't change. And I think what often happens is that when a technology like artificial intelligence comes along, which clearly is very, very powerful, and I suppose a lot of people get quite fearful of it, and they immediately go into a dystopian future scenario as to how it's going to affect society. But the reality is that when you play around with the technology, when you play around with the tool, you very quickly see what the limitation of the tool is. And exactly what you're saying, when you see the limitation, all of a sudden a light gets shone on what's really important. And, you know, then all of a sudden you go like, yeah, the tool's great and it's very, very powerful. But without this other thing, which is that human connection or relationships or community or creativity or curiosity or inventiveness and all of these things which humans are so good at, you can see, wow, this tool's brilliant at certain things, but it really sucks at these other things. But in combination with my imaginative thoughts and enthusiasm and energy, plus the tool, well, now we're talking magic. You know, now we've got something which is really, really useful. And that you only realize once you play around with it, once you experiment with it, once you can start to see what its shortcomings are. And that's why I'm adamant that the combination of technology and what people are good at, I think, is really where the magic lies here. The technology is not, you know, yes, it's powerful, and in the wrong hands, it can be hugely destructive. But the technology itself is sterile. It's an artifact. It's not alive. And I think that being alive or being curious or just being human is really where the value lies. My hope is that we will start to realize that and start to value it more, because we've kind of forgotten about those things. And we need to nurture it a little bit more.
There's something beautifully poetic about, through the journey of the machines, we kind of always circle back to our humanity. And it's always nice to have these kinds of conversations with you, to realize these big, deep home truths. So John, thanks. That was awesome. Would love to catch you and everyone else to join us next Tuesday, same time, as we discuss things with the future in mind. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Alex.